Hello everyone, I'm Don Moyer from Moyer Marine. The purpose of this video is to take you through the rebuilding process on a Moyer Marine 502 flange pump. Much of the information we will cover today is in the written instructions that comes with our repair kits. This includes not only our 502 flange pump, but also our 501 pedestal pump, since the rebuilding steps are basically the same for both pumps. Since its original release, there has only ever been one change made to our MMI pumps of any consequence, which involved the location of the bearing stop ring on the shaft. In early 2013, we moved the bearing stop ring approximately 3/16 of an inch toward the flange end of the pump, essentially the width of the oil seal. This small change enabled us to relocate the oil seal from the flange end of the pump to the impeller chamber side of the bearings. In this new location, the oil seal will still prevent oil from leaking out through the weep hole, and it also provides the important benefit of keeping raw water from reaching the bearings in the event of a failure of the water seal. Any water leakage from the impeller chamber will now flow out of the weep hole before reaching the bearings. We made the same change to our MMI 501 pedestal pumps for the same reason. All of our recent repair kits include the latest shafts, so no matter which vintage of pump you have, it will automatically be upgraded to the latest version by the installation of our kit. The first step in disassembly is to remove the back plate. Note that the thumb screws are captive, meaning that they will remain in the back plate after the threads are free of the housing. If you accidentally remove one of the thumb screws completely, simply thread it through the back plate prior to reassembly. Then remove the impeller using a needle nose pliers or one of our MMI impeller pulling tools. Removing a large inside snap ring in the flange end of the pump will enable us to drive out the shaft, the bearings, and the oil seal. The best way to support the MMI 502 pump while driving out the shaft and bearing assembly is to straddle two 2x4s and then use the piece of hardwood dowel in the kit to drive out the bearing assembly. MMI 501 kits also include an aluminum disc to support the housing between the two 2x4s. If the inner bearing stays in the housing, use the 3/8 inch drive and 9/16 inch deep socket and extension to drive the bearing and oil seal from the housing. You can then cock the 9/16 inch socket to one side and drive out any of the seals that remain. The first step in assembly is to clean the inside of the housing and apply a thin layer of light grease to facilitate installation of the bearings later. Then we'll insert a new water seal into the pump housing. This is the smaller of the two seals, positioning it over the seal recess so that the side with the tiny garter spring faces the impeller chamber. We can then use a 13/16 spark plug socket to carefully drive the water seal fully into its recess until the lip end of the seal rests against the ridge around the end of the hole in the housing, as viewed through the impeller chamber. For ease of installation, our most recent repair kits are shipped with the bearings already pressed onto the shaft. In the unlikely event that you find yourself within the earlier kit and your bearings are packed separate from the shaft, you can reference the written instructions that comes with each kit. Coat the lip of the oil seal, this is the larger of the two seals, with general purpose grease and slip it over the impeller end of the shaft, making sure the lip of the seal with the thin garter spring is facing away from the impeller section toward the flange end of the pump. Then the entire shaft and bearing assembly can be driven into the housing. Drive the shaft and bearing assembly using the short section of pipe provided in the kit until the flange end bearing clears the snap ring groove, approximately 1/8 of an inch below the flange surface. Installing the snap ring completes the internal assembly of the pump. To install the impeller, we apply a thin coating of general-purpose grease on the end of the shaft, then align the flat side on the inside of the impeller hub with the flat side of the shaft, and slide the impeller over the shaft until it's completely inside the impeller chamber. Then we check the back plate to be sure the O-ring is in place within the groove, and apply a thin layer of general-purpose grease over the O-ring to ensure that it stays in place. To install the back plate, position it over the back of the pump so that the ends of the thumb screws enter the 4 holes in the housing, and then tighten the thumb screws one at a time. Be careful to not move the plate around on the back of the pump housing more than necessary so as to not disturb the O-ring. The back plate should seal with the thumb screws finger tight, but on older pumps, in cases where the housing or the back plate are not perfect, you may have to snug the thumb screws with a pair of pliers or use a standard back plate gasket along with the O-ring to prevent leakage. Using a flat screwdriver, you can rotate the shaft counterclockwise so as to orient the vanes of the impeller in their proper direction. This completes the rebuilding of an MMI flange pump or pedestal pump. We thank you for your time and attention. You can find our pumps, rebuild kits, and atomic force support at moyermarine.com.